Hi everybody, welcome to Missy's Imaginings. I thought today I would try something new. I've had a couple requests and questions from some of you guys watching, and so I thought it might be fun to take some of those little questions and turn them into little snippet videos. They're just going to be little short videos to answer a question. So you can let me know if that's something you'd like me to continue doing, or if you like the longer ones better. But this is the zigzag pattern for a t-shirt, and I don't know why I managed to cut them the wrong way, but for some reason I did. But I had a question on how to put this zigzag together, and so I thought, okay, well, let's go ahead and do that. So this is what the pieces look like. It's for an MSD size BJD. The pattern's already on the website at Missy'sImaginings.com. So you can go over there and scroll down through the blog till you get to this. Just click on the PDF. Or you can go directly to the ready to print page and look through the titles and click on the link there. So this is what the pattern pieces look like. I already have added in the darts on the side, so we can get directly to the question. So in putting this together, the first thing I'm going to do is to put in some stay stitching along the zigzag on the front. And I have cotton here, so my basic construction is going to be a little different because I'm not using a stretch fabric. In just that when I do around the neck, I might put in a little lining because it's not stretchy, and this is a cotton, so it would probably fray. But I am just going to stitch along the seam line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. And as you can see, I'm just pivoting. I think I can get one more stitch. Oh, I'm not going to chance it. There we go. And I'm just pivoting on those points. Sink your needle and pivot. And I'm not going to worry about back tacking, it's only stay stitching. And so I'm just going to do that. Actually, I still had it on a basting stitch, which I didn't need. But in any event, it's just to give a stitch line so you can see where the seam allowance would be. Now I'll do it on the white piece. So here we go. There we go. Now you can tell my stitches are smaller. Oh, one more, I think, so I can clear my seam allowance. There we go. And as you can see, I'm not going to the very end. I'm pivoting on what would be the seam allowance line shown on the actual pattern piece, so that I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go, until I get to the top, then I'm stitching to the neckline. There we go. Alright, so then I'll trim off that thread. Okay, so now the way that I would put this together is, first off, I'm going to trim the points, not all the way to the seam line, but about a little under 1/8 of an inch away. I'm just going to trim those tips off a little under 1/8 of an inch. And there we go on that piece. And then I'm going to snip to the stay stitching almost about a 1/16 of an inch away from the stay stitching on the inside of those points. There we go. Now I'll do the same on this piece. Snip here, and on this one. There we go. And all this is doing is it's getting a little bit of that bulk out of the way, and it's making it so it'll be easier to see when we're sewing. So now, in the same way that we've done on some curved fabrics, the goal is to fool your sewing machine into thinking that you're sewing a straight line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the neckline, because I can always adjust my hemline, but I want the neckline to work. So I'm going to line up the neckline with the seam allowance even, and there you can see the curve of the neckline follows. So then I'm not going to pin it. I'm going to go ahead and put that in my machine, sink my needle and back tack, because I don't want that coming apart. That's my neckline. All right, and now I'm going to sew down to what would be the pivot point. Let me get my pin. And before I get there, I want to verify that it matches. So the pivot point of this stay stitching matches the pivot point of the piece underneath, and it does. So now I'm going to sew down to that pivot point. And this is why the stay stitching is so important, because now you can't see the fabric underneath, you can only see your stay stitching. So now I'm going to lift my foot, and I'm going to pivot those fabrics together for the next line. And so you have to pull the underneath fabric your direction towards the inside of the machine, while pulling the white or top fabric away from the machine. And now once again, I'm going to let me get all these excess fabric out of the way so that I'm not catching my sewing with the needle when I come down. I'm going to lay that on top of the other one so my seam allowance is lined up and my stay stitching lines up. I'm going to double check the points with my pin, so I've got a point here and a point underneath, and those match up. So now, and I'm pulling the fabric away from my needle, I'm going to stitch down the stay stitching to my next point. And there we go. Now we're going to repeat the process. Lift the foot, and trimming off those little tips and inside just makes this pivoting process easier. So that's why we do that, because it's all pivoting on our needle, and you just want to pull your fabric clear of the needle so when you start stitching the next seam, you don't have anything tucked under there that'll get caught. And once again, I'm going to line up my stay stitching, check my point here. There it is. My hand's in the way, sorry about that. There we go. And the point underneath, line those up. And it's slippery on my surface there. Okay, so I'm going to lift that up and show that they match. There we go. And now I'm going to come down the next seam just to that pivot point. And one more. There we go. Lift my foot. Whoa. Okay, now I'm going to pull again. There we go. And getting this fabric out of the way. There we go. I'm going to line that up. And my fabric comes right down to the end. And make sure everything's pulled out of the way. There we go. And stitch down this way. And now when I get to the bottom, I'm going to back tack to hold those securely. There we go. Trim my threads here. Are you ready for the reveal? So then you pull it apart, and this is what it looks like. Now, if you want to get rid of some of that pucker, you can go in and even trim a little bit closer to that seam line. And then if you need to, trim and go ahead and snip what was the point. There we go. Down a little bit farther. So, and then on this point, it's pretty close already to that one, but I can trim, do a snippet to the seam line in the point of the white. And then we had another point here. And it looks like my point got a little caught, so I might snip kind of around it. There we go. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press these seams open, and these two little things I snipped will just lay and overlap one another like so. So I'll press that and then come back to the camera. Once you have it pressed, you can go in, and now I can see some of those little stay stitching basting stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that stitching so that it doesn't show up on the front. If you want, you can always add some top stitching on both sides that will help hold your seam allowance down on the inside. But if you choose to do that, just, oh, let me get my scissors, that'll be better. Just keep in mind that that stitching will, show on the front. So if you don't want any stitching to show on the front, then you wouldn't want to do that. So we'll go ahead and snip this and pull that out. There's those stitches. And it looks like there's a couple more down here that are showing. So we'll take that thread off. I have a little black fuzz. I don't know what that was from. It's not that I ever sew with black, right? Alright, so here is the front of our little t-shirt. And because this is cotton, I went ahead and I serged the back, and I'm going to have an open back. So if you want to use a cotton fabric rather than a knit, just be sure that you leave add some extra allowance to the center back so that you have a seam allowance to sew, you know, part way up the back, and then leave part of that opening to go over the head, because cottons don't stretch. So you might want to do that. But that's how I put together the front of the zigzag, and we'll go ahead and finish this up, and I'll come back to the camera and show you what it looks like finished. And here's the little finished shirt. I went ahead and put some little rosebud ribbons just at the points, just for fun. And this is Prudence. She's 16 inches tall. She's by the Tonner subsidiary company Wild Imagination, and her name is Prudence. She's part of the Eloine Wild collection, and so she's a good little MSD fashion doll, and I just thought she would look really cute in this little outfit with her little colored wig. So this is the front of the shirt. Then we'll go to the back, and we'll have to move her hair out of the way. Sorry about my hand. So here's the back, and because this isn't stretchy fabric, it's just cotton, so I just sewed from the hem to about here and left it open, and then attached a snap closure at the top there. So that's the back. And then I went ahead and made some of the little shorts, and the stand kind of goes up through, so they hang a little wonky, but I didn't want the stand in the way. And then I just did a little drawstring tie. I didn't want to mess with elastic in this particular one, and then I put little beads on the end of the ties. So there we go. So that's what it looks like when it's done, and that's how I sew the little zigzag pattern. So if you kind of like these little videos that are just little snippets of, you know, one particular thing to answer a question, go ahead and let me know in the comments. See if we kind of like this, and it might be kind of a fun format to be a little bit more direct and answer some questions. So until next time, happy sewing. Bye.